Welcome to Spirit Baby Radio. I am your host, Kelly Meehan, Spirit Baby medium, medical intuitive, and mentor. I believe we are entering into a new psychic structure of our reality that embodies deeper trust, self-love, and fearless integrity. Our New World energy needs us all to make space for it so we can support consciously conceiving parents, true intuitive pregnancies, and trusting the nature of birthing babies upon our lands with co-creation of heart. I thank you personally for tuning into all things spiritual and earth grounding, conversations that support each other and teach us to be open, free, and thrive within autonomous living and with the spark of wisdom. This is Spirit Baby Radio. Welcome to episode 163, April 14th, 2023, supporting our heart-sensitive children and activating their gifts towards positivity in today's world. What do I mean by a sensitive child? How do you as a parent, how do you parent a sensitive child? Are you a sensitive parent? What tools and energy skills can you create for you and your child or children? I have a special guest episode, and I'm really excited because we've just been talking away right before, and it's Dr. Karen Kan. Hello.
Hi, great to be here, Kelly. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm going to read her sweet little bio here. She's a doctor of light medicine and #1 international best-selling author, visionary, and pioneer in healing, consciousness, and spirituality. Her mission is to empower spiritually conscious people to harness their intuitive, healing, and manifesting superpowers to reach their highest vibration so they can help anchor in the reality of heaven on earth. As the founder of the Academy of Light, Dr. Karen teaches students her 3-step say it for me.
Topacan.
Topacan healing method, which involves aligning with the source of divine wisdom, asking quality questions through divine muscle testing, and activating high vibrational healing frequencies. She is like the Yoda from Star Wars, training you to be a self-healing Jedi Master. I love it. Thank you for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm really excited about our topic today.
Yeah, and I always talk about like how did I connect with people, and I feel like I found you. Your energy was I think it showed up on Facebook initially through an ad, and then I was let many people know I'm into light therapy, and so then I found you through that, and then I'm like, wait a minute, and then I was like, oh, spirituality, energetics, starseed. I'm like, I just instantly felt like she looked like a busy woman, but I was like, maybe she'll come on my podcast and speak about the children. I feel like March has been really children centric. I'm starting to open my, I haven't actually fully announced it, to be receiving working with children outside of the womb that are older. And so it's just perfect timing. And so I know there's so much to talk about, but please, just even sharing how you got into this work. Maybe we'll start from there and then we'll go into children energy. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I'm in my mid 50s now, so back in the day, it was not that common to talk about highly sensitive children, even adults. And in fact, I remember growing up thinking that I wanted to be not like my mom because she was super sensitive and she would be made fun of by my dad. And then later on, as we grew up, by my brother, who were very kind of left brain logic and stop being so sensitive, right? And so I really spent a lot of my time trying to be who I wasn't. And I think that one of the things for parents today is really honoring and respecting the sensitive child as opposed to trying to change that child to be something or someone different compared to what you think is society's norm of what's, a good kid or what's a normal kid. Like normal is highly overrated. We'll talk about that later, I suppose. So I never really honored my sensitive side because I wanted to not be like my mom. And I even attracted my first husband, who was very much like my dad, who said, stop being so sensitive, let it be like a, water off a back's duck, like, and let it go. And I mean, there was some real truth to that, but not in, at all growing up did I ever get your sensitivity is a gift. Right? Like it was never that. It was always like a curse. It was a bad thing. Like get rid of it. Right? Like stop being so sensitive. but it's actually a gift. And that's why I wrote my book, Sensitivity is Your Superpower, so that people can honor that, oh my gosh, yes, I'm sensitive and maybe I have some symptoms related to that or issues. But if I learn to turn that into a superpower, my life is different and those around me can benefit from that as well. So, and when I went through medical school, still not honoring my sensitivity, unlike a lot of my colleagues who are very, very able to tolerate those, 72 hours no sleep and whatever that is, me not so much. So that was really, really hard on my body because I was not only feeling my own emotions related to what was going on, I could feel into other people's emotions, right? Like whether it be a 14-year-old that's dying of, Crohn's disease or inflammatory bowel disease, or, the grandma who's got cancer who's dying, or, I could
Mm.
feel all of their emotions. And I was very popular because I was so empathetic. But at the same time, it was like a big, huge burden because I didn't know that I was carrying other people's emotions in my energy field. I didn't know there was such a thing as clearing that. I didn't know who I was because I was always taught to be there for others, and sensitive people tend to like follow that piece of advice. It's like be there for others, be generous, and we're like, okay, okay, sure, I'll just give and I'll give and I'll give and
Mm.
I'll give, and then we get depleted and we wonder why we go into complete adrenal exhaustion by the age of 30 something, which is what happened to me. And it was a blessing. That's what happened to my mom, but for her it was in her 40s. So I broke down about 10 years, you know prior to when she broke down age wise. And so that was a big wake up call to really start, honoring who I really was. And in the midst of that, realize, oh, I'm highly sensitive and that's okay. That's okay. It's actually a gift. And how do I use it as a gift? So I just, learned like how to do self healing, some training with some spiritual teachers, and kept reading and learning. And of course, I have that active left brain as the medical doctor, right? So marrying it with that holistic whole brain approach became really important to me, as I noticed my patients in the office, a lot of them were sensitive too, and no one ever listened to them. No one ever understood them. So, and including the children. So I had a number of children who, they went to school, their parents did not want them medicated on whatever the school was suggesting. And they said, is there another way? I said, well, let's explore that, right? So we would work on diet, we would work on attitude, we would work on all sorts of things. And eventually I started teaching them some very simple energy healing techniques, if you will, methodologies, very simple. And it was revolutionary, changed that child's trajectory of their life. Instead of being medicated and depressed and whatever, they literally, like, there's one kid that I had who at age 14, parents were like, we don't want him on drugs. What can we
Mm.
do? We changed his diet. We really taught him that there's nothing wrong with you, actually.
Wow.
School is not appropriate to your personality and your
Mhm.
energy. So how do we make the best of it? So we gave him some suggestions. Mom was very strict, so she was like, "Okay, that we're doing this, right?" He fought it at the beginning because he was a teenager, but then he did it, and he went from like almost failing to A in school.
Wow.
And I remember telling him, I said, "Don't ever work in a cubicle. You need to work outdoors." And that's exactly what he
Mm.
did. He's now like an expert tree, I don't know what they call them, tree cutter manager
Mm.
person.
Like an
So he climbs
arborist.
trees for a living. Yeah, it's perfect, and he's
Wow.
happy as a clam. You
Wow.
know, so yeah, so that's the long story of how I got to do what I do. And I absolutely have a really sweet spot in my heart for empathetic, sensitive children.
Mm.
And I've seen many of these children grow up and be amazing adults. And I was really crying, just,
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I wanted some few things that you said because I'm curious to hear your thoughts, and there's so many things to jump into. But when you were talking about that sensitive child, and I like you, of course, my sensitivity made me sick. It hurt me, right? It brought me down to really dark places, and then I had to look at it as a superpower of love, the ability to feel energy. And I know a lot of empathic more people come to me and they're like, I don't want to feel, or it's so intense, or they want to shut it down. And of course, depression, anxiety, whatever. And I said, no, this is a part of your energy, your connection to have that sense of love for the world. And I do see a lot of healers that come to me, and nurses, I'd say a lot of nurses and even medical doctors. And I'm like, even though there's that left brain component, there's also that sensitivity. I've seen it so many times, and then we see it with their children too. And then sometimes it can be very challenging because all of a sudden it's like, well, my child is sensitive, or oh no, like it's like, what do I do with that? But even I see this thing, this is what I'm curious your thoughts are. I see this post going around about, I don't know, it was under holistic psychology or whatever. And I've heard this before. And the word empath, like using this word empath, and many of people I've seen in psychology will say, well, an empath is a trauma response to some major trauma, and therefore you're on guard and you're reading the world. And I kind of get that, but another part of me makes it feel like it's looked at as a disorder then. I mean, what are your thoughts? I'm
Right.
kind of like uneasy about that. And then I'm going, can't you, I get it. Like it can, I mean, I experienced it myself. It can go into really dark places. But as I tell people, when you feel negative, darker energies or forces, guess what? You can feel the beauty, exuberance, and love and joy to such a deep level. And that's where I'm like, so of course there's a balance. But what do you think about the empath being just traumatized, like it's a cure, or they're like almost like they're diseased or something? What are your thoughts on that?
Right. Yeah, it's unfortunate that it's been labeled like that. And I like to say, is it chicken or the egg, right? Like we
Hmm.
have in our society a what's called a genetic determinism point of view that we've been taught for many, 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 many decades, that our genes dictate our health. Well, they don't. Dr. Bruce Lipton did this work in the 1960s that said, wait a second, it's the environment that tells the genes what to do. The genes cannot regulate themselves. But he was poo-pooed, he was laughed at, no one believed him, even though he had solid data for that. And now, that was 1960 something, right? Even before I was born. Now it's 50 something years, almost 60 years later. Finally, it's out there going, oh, epigenetics, like if it's something new, So I think the same thing with these labels that are going on. Let's just put it this way, in psychiatry, and I know we're talking about psychology as well, but in psychiatry, the DSM, that the diagnostic manual, for supposed psychiatric diseases was about this thick when it first started. Now it's about
Hmm.
this thick. Do we really think that we somehow inherited extra disorders, right? Like
Good
this
point.
many, right? It doesn't make any sense to the person that goes, wait a second, it was this thick. Why is it this thick, right? What we, call, you know, um, let's just say undisciplined children, now we call them oppositional defiant disorder, right? Like we've all these disorders. Now, why would that be? Now, my thoughts are that if you can label it, you can prescribe for it.
Mm,
So you can't have something, you can't give a drug for something that is not labeled, or at least in a book. And so there is some sort of vested interest to put a label so that you can prescribe for it, and on some level do something about it, right? So there's a lot of things that are in the DSM-4. Are we on 5 or 6 now? I can't remember. Anyway, I'm retired, so I can't remember which one we're on. The DSM-5 or 6 or wherever we're on, that is like, you look at it and you're like, that could be like anybody. You know what I mean? And so as we believe that there are more mental illnesses out there, guess what? We manifest that there are more mental illnesses out there. Now, that's not saying that, I'm not saying that there are things that don't exist, because certainly schizophrenia, I mean, yeah, that exists. The reason for that may be very different
yeah.
on a dimensional energetic level
Mm.
than what we think it is. But yeah, it could, I think for me, it's likely that the person has, just like a person can have a predisposition for diabetes or something like that, they have a disposition for being highly sensitive.
Hmm.
And in doing that, when they get traumatized, that expands
Yeah.
or accentuates the so-called imbalance. And yeah, they could basically go down a really, really dark hole. But according to Dr. Elaine Aron and her colleagues, years and decades ago, the percentage of highly sensitive people was about 20%. But when I wrote my book, I asked them for the actual paper on that, and they actually sent me the newer one, which was in 2018, which showed over 30% were highly sensitive. That's an extra 10% in a number of decades, right? Now they maybe were like, well, we're not really sure why it went up. But that's my observation. My observation was as children were being born, there were more and more sensitive children. And it's fairly esoteric, but for those people that are interested in this kind of stuff, Dolores Cannon has some
Oh yeah.
amazing books, including The Three Waves of Volunteers, from which I derived my soul mission matrix to help people extract their soul mission.
Mm.
And she talks about, you know, these three waves of different highly sensitive people. The indigos were like the first wave, and they're now in their 70s and 80s, and they basically broke down barriers. And there's still adult indigos now who are much younger. They're the ones that are rebels. They're the ones that fight. They're the ones that occupy Wall Street. Like those are the indigos. And then you have, you know, your next wave, which are a little softer, which some of your earth angels and some of your starseed people are here to actually they're here to vibrate a specific frequency, and a lot of times it's love or peace or joy. That's part of their job. And the other job might be to do a specific thing, like, you know, create peace, like do some sort of physical 3D action. And then the third wave of volunteers are a lot of the little ones that we have now that are just peaceful. You
Mm.
know, like I don't know if you've noticed some of them, but they're just, it's like nothing phases them. You know, they could even be in an abusive relationship and they're just still happy, still smiling. You're like, how do they do that? Right. So they're the ones that are here to enjoy and just anchor down that peace, joy, and love for the rest of us, while the fighters have done their work, you know,
Oh
ahead of
boy,
time.
right?
Yeah.
A few things you said. First of all, the DSM, I had that book because I got that training. And after a few years, you're right, it isn't really thick book. After a few
It's
years, I was
ridiculous.
like, I want to burn this book. And the energy of it was so yucky to me. But I know not to downplay, of course, the schizophrenia, bipolar. But I know for me, after the training, I was like, I'm not doing this work. I don't. It just
Mm.
wasn't. It didn't feel right. It felt like very. It felt very. There was a window, not a window, a ceiling. Like I was like, what's beyond that? So it was very interesting because I do like somatic psychology. There's parts of it, and I pull that more into this space. But even like the overdiagnosis with children, that is a big deal. And I swear, like just this conversation the other day, I'm hearing like neurodiversity. It's like everybody's ADD, ADHD. I swear this is what
Yep.
everything is happening right now.
Yep.
And I always
Yep.
I look from a somatic perspective is what I learned is that it's just dysregulated nervous system, which, I go, but what does that mean? Because some days I feel ADD and other days I don't. So should I label myself? Should I go on meds? Even I had someone say something to me like, "Oh, you're not ADD." I was like, "Oh my God, is that how I come off? Like, am I like frantic?" Like, that's my judgment of it. I was like, "Am I?" And then I was like, "Huh." But it is like, do you hear this a lot with ADDs? I mean, I swear, like more lately than not. It's like,
Yes, I think that a lot of adults who have, who we would, if it's still a label, but we would label
yeah.
empathic or very sensitive, have been also labeled
Oh,
ADD. And for
interesting.
them,
Okay.
sometimes it's a godsend to have the label. So they have
Yeah.
something that someone honors and respects, some label that explains why they do the things they do or how, you know, whatever they're going through. And I think if people are using the label for to see what medications are best, that's a very narrow use of it. But sometimes people, it gives them permission to be who they are. So that is a
Mm,
benefit of having that label. Now, my preference is that, well, actually you're highly sensitive, so let's see how
mm,
we can work with your sensitivities so you can use it as a superpower rather than as some sort of crutch, like you need a
mm.
medication or you need to be different than who you are. Most people that suffer from their sensitivity, it's not because there's anything wrong with the sensitivity, it's that they don't know how to control those superpowers, just like
Wow.
the
Yeah.
superhero, right? Like, you know, those silly, superhero movies, Shazam, you know, where he's
Yeah.
like, woo,
Yeah.
I can fly right into the wall,
Yeah.
right? Because he can't control his
Yeah.
superpowers. Like, you know, Spider-Man, when he's first learning to use the webs, like he's all over the place, smacking against the brick, you know, like the side of the building. So it's something similar, but these skills are not hard to learn. And in fact, one of the reasons why I wrote my book, Sensitivity is Your Superpower, so people can get a handle on them right away and know there's some really simple things and some simple tools that they can use to really help support them to be in their superpowers and not, in other words, to pick and choose when they use their superpowers rather than it
Yeah.
being 24/7.
And I know that's the hard one because I know I speak from myself as I was a reckless empath in my earlier years and just reading everything because I didn't know. And it did make me adrenal fatigued and it made me not want to go out and be social with people. And then as
Right.
I mean, it made me like I prefer, I would go out and go to, I can't believe my 20s I went to raves, but then I would like hide out for like days in the house. And I remember my husband was a very social, outgoing person, and he still is. But I've learned that I could be that way, and I never thought I could, honestly.
Mhm.
But my children have taught me they want to be out in the world and socialize. And I don't want to be that mom. And I've seen those moms where they're like making their kids stay home because they can't handle the world. And I was like, I can't
Mm.
be that mom. But I needed to really go deep inside, and do a lot of different really holistic methods to find where I can feel safe enough in my body, safe enough to go out in the world and not feel like it's always on. And so there definitely is a lesson. And I love that you're teaching that because we do have to find that skill of like, am I overfeeling? Am I putting out my tentacles? Is it necessary?
Right.
I've had people throughout the years, and maybe they ask you this too. They say, Kelly, do you read people everywhere you go? Or can you, right? And I said, yes, I could, but why would I want to? I said,
Hmm.
to me, it's very psychic invasive, but I also said, I don't want to feel that I'm that unsafe that I have to read everybody's energy all
Yeah.
around me all the time. I like to put automatic pilot of safety. If I'm not safe, my body's going to tell me. But
Right.
it
Good.
wasn't an overnight process, It was like, and I want my children to understand that through my example, because I see it with my older one and I see it with my little one. And even as you're talking about the newer children coming in, I know that my 6-year-old, he's very different in a very soul level, and he makes me very curious about the love that he's brought into our lives in a way that it almost was hard for me to receive. I'm not going to lie. But his simpleness of like everything seems so easy and everything seems so like, but I also can hear how when he tunes into people, he really hears them and sees them. And I wasn't like that. My other son wasn't like that. But I also noticed my fear for him is that he's almost too good to others. Do you know what I mean? In a
Hmm.
way, I'm like, oh,
Absolutely.
he could be taken advantage of. I could see that. And I call him my sweet gnome because he's just this little woodland creature. And like when he was, especially from age 1 to 3, a lot of people would stop me and say things about him. And one time, this one woman was like, I don't know what is about him. And it was just so awesome. She goes, there's something about his energy. And she's like, this like lady like at the YMCA, I'm using the bathroom. And she's like, I don't know what it is. And I was like, well, you tell me. Because I was like, what is she seeing? He's my son. I love him. And I see him in this light. But she was like, I don't know. And I was happened to be with a friend who had a kid. And she was just like, not happy about it. So I was like, I don't know. It hurt because there's a different story over there. But they were really like, I've had people do that before when he was really little. They're like, I don't know what it is. And
Yeah, so
I'm
he's
like,
radiating his beingness, right? That's who he
yeah,
really is. And he's like setting up that blueprint for the rest of us to be able to tap into our own vibration of who we really are too. So that's exactly the, perfect scenario what I was talking about before, how some of the younger ones,
oops,
their
sorry.
purpose is to be, just to be.
I don't know if you heard him squealing and laughing in the background all of a sudden.
No, no, but I'm
Okay, I'm
delighted.
like, what an interesting. Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. It's like your energy, you radiate a certain energy with children, and all of a sudden my children keep coming to the door.
They're like, oh, we like it in
I
there. We don't know
know. They're
why.
like, what is
Yeah.
this? I know. And I love that because again, it's like we don't have to overthink. I always call it the left
Yeah.
brain. Like I really feel like we get to set and tone our worlds to our frequency, but just really listening without listening. Do you know what I mean? Like kind of, but it
Right.
takes a training. And I know
It
that's
does.
what I tell people because they're like, oh, Kelly, I want to be connecting with my spirit baby. And I feel like I'm not. And then I hear all the energy they share. And I'm like, well, you're actually doing it. I was like, what do you want? Like a beam of Jesus to crash through the window and be like, there it is. Like, I'm like, this subtle energy of
Yes.
communication is there. And like, you just have to be open to
Hmm.
just be with it. And I do feel like intuition is like for some reason, even more collectively, even like right now in this moment, I've noticed that in the past days. I'm like, there's some really big energy right now that I feel like we really have to keep being in our own authentic space and then really letting that be a part of other people. Like it's okay to trust yourself. Like it really is. And I
Yeah, we're
want you
really being
to.
called
Yeah.
to, to play our little game of life at a higher level, for sure, for sure. And sometimes our children are there to train us.
Oh my gosh, this has been a big initiation by
Yeah.
far.
Yeah, children, I mean, they're just really, really amazing. And I don't know, if you want to, hear some of the
Yes.
stories about sensitive children, and maybe you can
Yeah.
continue asking questions and we can kind of weave
Yeah.
those
Absolutely.
answers. So one of my former clients slash patients had a little girl who was probably 2, 3, something like that, and a very spunky little one, and was, just the most amazing child. However, at night she would never sleep. And she would wake everybody up with seemingly night terrors or that kind of thing. Now, what we determined is that when she was sleeping, her sensors would be wide open, and she would be reading or sensing energies from beyond the veil, beyond the current timeline and area. She was very sensitive to all sorts of energies, including what was previously on the land. So we had to do a number of layers of healing on the land and the home. And then we figured out that in other dimensions and realities, for example, parallel realities, things like that, the land and the home had their issues in those realities. And she could sense that too. So we had to do this hunt of like, okay, what is she sensing now, right? So it wasn't, I would love to say it was an overnight success that we got her
Mm.
sleeping, but it took some investigation because I'd never had anyone that young with that degree of sensitivity and incredible gifts. So we had to figure these out. And then then she was able to, sense into not just entities, but entities attached to different objects in the room. And then like some extraterrestrial stuff she was
Mm.
sensing. For the most part, it wasn't part of her role or mission to actually have to deal with them. Now, you could say, well, is that because she's 2 or 3? Yes and no. Sometimes that's still a role. That could be still a role for even a young person. But in her case, it wasn't necessary. It was just like her sensors are wide open. And, at age 2 or 3, how much can you explain, right? So the first of all, we taught the parents to ask questions. And that's, I think, really helpful for anyone who has sensitive children who may be seeing ghosts, or maybe seeing dead grandma, or who may be seeing what you are considering their imaginary friend, right? So there are things that they can sense, sometimes fairies, spirits, angels, that, so on and so forth. And it's really good to teach the children discernment right from the beginning. So instead of saying, oh, honey, that's just your imaginary friend,
Mm.
it's much better to go, oh, well, what did you talk about today?
Mhm.
Right? And what's your imaginary friend's name? Or don't even say your imaginary friend, right? So if it's Josh, right, what does Josh say? Right? So because what's happening is sometimes spirits of lower vibration can take advantage of sensitive children by being their friend, right? But then eventually tell them to do things that are not so good. So that's where you want to be inquisitive and not just shut the kid down, right? Oh,
Mm.
this doesn't exist, or stop saying that, you're making it up, or it's in your imagination. So it's better to question and ask, like without judgment, asking questions about what's going on. Because yeah, if their friend Josh tells them that it's best to jump off a bridge, right? Stop that right away. And then you teach them discernment and say, okay, well, I'm not really sure Josh is a really good friend because you could be hurt, jumping off the bridge. And I'm going to say to Josh right now that that is not okay. And anyone who's going to be a friend of my child, you are not allowed to, to interact unless, and I have criteria, but the criteria is unless you're 100% truth, love, and light resonating with, source light. So usually that pet goes, a lot of them go packing because they're not allowed anymore in that space. So there's lots of different creative ways of, teaching your child discernment. And so for this little one, we were able to do some tools as well. I have, and it's free for, any of the parents listening in. It's called the Clearing and Protection Spray.
Mm.
So Clearing and Protection Spray formula, you can get it at clearingandprotectionspray.com. Anyway, it's basically a video that has certain positive frequencies. So when you play the video, you can actually just look at, a water bottle or a spray bottle. We teach people to just look at the water and spray bottle for about 9 seconds, and those frequencies will then be infused into the water.
Mm.
It actually helps to clear ghosts, negative emotional energy, even EMF, negative electromagnetic frequency radiation energy, which is can be very harmful to not just children but adults alike. And it'll hold that for about 24 hours in the space that you spray it in. And so we did have her decorate her own bottle, her own cute purple bottle from the dollar store with stickers and everything like that. So if she were scared and she, got up in the middle of the night, they would just teach her, just grab the bottle. And I think they were Catholic or something. So, they had a picture of Archangel Michael or something. So they would, they taught the daughter to say, Archangel Michael, please help, help heal this one, right? And she'd spray the ghost. And then they would disappear. And so eventually we got her sleeping through the night and not freaking out during the day. But it took a little bit of doing because we had to figure out what she was sensing. And then because she was so young, the parents really had to do some, creative training with her because we couldn't explain it to her like a 6-year-old would understand.
Yeah. And really good point, because I know a lot of people get really scared of negativity or dark entity. Even that word freaks people out. And I've had it come up here and there throughout the years. And what I like to tell people is that, like you said, you're calling in, of course, the highest, cleanest energy and wherever that frequency is. But I was honest with people and I said there are lower dark frequencies, and you can either be a part of that or not be a part of that. And I know make it sound so easy because I've seen them. I've seen them throughout the years. And I go, I don't want that. I don't want to be part of that. And I've seen them around people, and I go, and more years ago than now. I don't see that really rarely now, but I know that we're always changing and shifting, and I know that's a big deal. And you said, I like this. It's like an energetic hygiene. It's like really connecting. And like, as you said, even with children, especially in sleep, I know a lot of people, even adults, are like time travelers, right? Or like multidimensional. I know some people that just can't get their sleep right. And it's like, but I go, I wonder what you're doing then. Where are you going? And
Right. Yes. We have a whole protocol on that. Yes. How to delve in and figure out,
And is your left brain really like not letting you see that, because I do feel like we've created these little pockets of amnesia, I'll call it, when like, even like how we're born and then even how we die. I feel like we have that information as a part of us. And I know that sometimes that even saying that, people are like, what are you talking about? Or I don't know how to get there. And I go, we're more than what we make it, than what we realize. And I know with our children, we love so dearly, and they're having problems or anxieties. It's very overwhelming. And I know as a parent, we take the blame for every mother, especially. But I do feel like we do have to be really energetically responsible too, without feeling too much blame on ourselves, because I knew, being an energetically sensitive person, if my energy is shifting around my children, they're tuning in before I am even realizing what's happening, and they're reacting based off of my energy.
That's right.
And so when I see highly anxious parents or really like, deep stuff, I'm going, but I'm seeing the child is like not purposefully like taking that in. And then they're sensitive on top of that. And then it becomes this confusion of like, how do we do this? Or, what does it look like? But I feel like what you're saying too is like, it can take time.
Right. And wherewithal, depending on what the parent is open to.
Yeah.
There was a child who, I think she was 10 when the parents came to me for help. She's one of my VIP clients. Now, she never had to be on the calls. But here's the thing, they were like, well, I'll call her Natalie for lack of, that's not her name, but Natalie, she's got this problem in school, she's got all these allergies and intolerances. Can you help? Right. So, yes, I can help by delving in to figure out what the issues are through this Topicam healing method that we mentioned before. But here's the thing, we actually taught her to go to her happy place, to her stillness place. And we taught her a kid's way of doing that. And the parents had home play. So, I bought them or had them buy, specific little like children's type of video, to watch. Dr. Kinslow and his wife created one called Martina and the Ogre, where it teaches them how to do, go into the happy place. And I said, and here's the thing, you both need to do it too. So both parents had to do it. And so I could sense the anxiety, especially of the mom, who was like, there's something wrong with her. There's something wrong with her. There's something wrong with her. There was this constant energy of that, right? And I'm like, here's the thing, she's going to reflect, whatever energy you're putting out as well. So yeah, we don't just tell her to do it because she's the one with the symptoms. You actually have to do it too, right? So, and the thing is, because I'm an intuitive, I can just check if they did it or not. So, and I could tell based on their energy anyway, but it was amazing because, we did this little girl, if she started to get a reaction or a high from something that she ate, instead of mom freaking out, right? Oh my God, she's gonna die, right? That kind of thing. Her mom would go into stillness. She would say, honey, you know what to do. And then she would go into stillness, and within a few minutes, the reaction would subside, it would go away, and she'd be fine. As opposed to her being so sensitive and intolerant and allergic to 20 things and not being able to go to her friend's house because she doesn't know what she's going to touch. She might die, right? Like that kind of stuff. It's amazing how empowering it can be when you just share with people simple tools. They just don't know that they can control their superpowers. And when they do, it's a whole different life and they can really enjoy it.
You make me, something you said I think is really great, many great things, but the one thing I feel like it's important is when to ask children the questions. Like they have an imaginary friend, or they feel something weird, or they feel something scary. I feel like parents, we tend to go either, no, you're okay, or I don't know what that
That's
is,
right.
or, and I say, and so there was somebody shared a post about death. Oh, just tell your kid there's a heaven and this. And I said, what if you ask your kid what they think it is? At
Yes.
5, at 7, at 8, whenever they want to talk about it, because the story,
Right.
the energy is going to change. And someone was like, I never thought of that. Everybody's going, do this, this, and this. And I said, how about we just question? And because we don't want to ultimately, I feel like we know death as a part of us, but to articulate it in this reality, I don't think it translates very well in words. So I feel like people don't know really what they're saying, because I feel like it's more of an experience, to be honest. This is what my philosophy and where I'm coming into, because everybody has a different interpretation of death, because it doesn't belong in articulation. Maybe I can even say it like that. And so I've done that with my children. Like when they have supernatural experiences, I don't want to fill them with my
Right.
information. And being
Right.
somebody that is clairvoyant, clairsentient, clair whatever, and other things too. There's something else beyond those things. I know I am. I'm really conscientious of like not making my kid, oh, you got to be like me, that's why with my older one, I started to notice little things and then how to promote that. I'm very delicate about it again, because again, they have different abilities. And so with my younger one, many years ago, he's 6 now, so it was like maybe 3. We're sitting in the bedroom, just cuddling in the bed, and he looks out the window and he goes, there's Nani's. And we're like, Nani's? Like that's his grandmother, right? My
Ah,
mom. And she was dead, by the way. She just died a year before that. And then my older son looks at the window and he looks at me and we look at each other and we're like, oh yeah, Nani's is out the window. Okay. Like we were not like, no, don't, we're not shaming. We're not saying no.
right.
Just because me and my older son didn't see Nani's out that window, I don't know. I mean, he did, and we're going
Right.
with it. Like it doesn't
Yeah. No,
matter. Like we don't.
that's great. That's great. Well, the thing is, parents feel like they're the responsible one. They need to teach their children, so they're constantly anxious that they're going to do something wrong. They're going to
Oh
screw
yes.
their kid up, right? So, but if we ask questions, and we can be perfectly honest, and if the 3-year-old says, "Well, don't you see, Nani?" You say, well, honey, you can see Nani. That's awesome. I can't see Nani as well because it's a little harder sometimes for adults to see after, people have passed away. But I love that you can see Nani. Could you
Yeah.
please tell her we love her so much and thank you for
Oh,
visiting?
yeah.
Right. So in that way, it's not like you're trying to prop them up, but you're being honest. Like you don't pretend to see them when you don't see them, right? But
No.
explain the best way you can, but also honor their experience. And one of the greatest questions, especially if you're concerned about the imaginary friend, or is it an entity, is it positive, negative, whatever, because sometimes they'll talk to angels too, right? So you'll
Mhm.
say, how does it make you feel?
Mm.
How do you feel when you talk to Josh, when you talk to whatever,
Yeah.
right? Oh, I feel really happy.
Mm.
Josh makes me smile, right? Probably fine. Right? you know
And that's
um
the thing you share is like we don't have to have the experience to be confirming to them. Like, yeah,
right.
you see Nani's, that's great, tell her we love her, but it's like, yeah, just because I can't see her in that moment, I'm just like, okay, whatever. But to me, it's like I don't want to take away. We don't want to take away from our children that you can't see those things because I can't. You know what I'm saying? Like, or the
Right,
anxiousness.
exactly. Yeah, and that's a nice thing is if they can, through the parents, learn to manage, their superpowers, then they can keep them. Because what happens is that we forget because we've been so
Mm,
traumatized and conditioned with society that it's not okay for us to see, hear, feel, touch, whatever. It's not okay for us to be sensitive. So we try to drum it out of ourselves, which is impossible. And that's how we get sick
yeah.
because we never learn how to manage it, right? So instead of having this humongous satellite sensor on 24/7 with a bazillion channels available to us, we can just go, oh, well, you know what? I don't need to tune into all those channels right now, right? So you just narrow your focus and go, this is what I'm focused on right now. And it's funny because my husband's very sensitive as well. He's an indigo. And sometimes he's like, did you see that person's energy? And he's
Oh,
still
I
back. He's still
love
on for here like 5 minutes ago, right? And I'm like, no. And he's thinking, well, you're sensitive, right? And I'm like, well, that's called energetic voyeurism. Do you
it.
really need to be in their space? And he's like, oh, I don't, I guess not. Like, it's
Yeah.
irrelevant. So that's what we train is if we do the stillness exercise, which I have in, chapter 4 of my book. And of course it's, parents can make that into the happy place for children, like do it your own way. Right.
Mm.
But it's very, very easy. Rub your hands, you feel the buzzing, the energy. That's it. That's it. So, so if they are in their own space, they know who they are. They feel their own bodies. They're fully present, all the energy circuits in this body, in this timeline. A lot of times it'll naturally pull away from all the things they don't need to sense because it's not part of their safety. It's not part of
Mm.
what's relevant, right? So, yeah, I joke with my husband about him being an energetic voyeur because I'm like, you don't need to know that information. If I need to
Yeah.
know, the universe will tell me I need to know.
Yeah. I know it's funny talking about husbands. I've shared this before. My husband drains everything electronics.
He
He
was?
drains electronic things.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
For
sometimes
yeah, a
I
lot.
used to do that when I
Like
had
batteries, like,
fibromyalgia.
oh really, like car batteries, motorcycle batteries, lawnmower batteries, watch batteries, and then even
I used to do that.
we had a new leased car and the battery started dying right away and he brought it to the dealer. They said it's totally fine. And then I have to remind him that sometimes it was way worse when he was younger. Now it's a lot less, but I go to him. I don't know what kind of energy you're running, dude, but I'm like, you just take, he doesn't wear watches anymore. And I think his phone also doesn't hold a lot of battery out as well, I noticed. And I'm like, I just laugh about it because, I know he's a different kind of empath person and how he connects with the world and how he interacts with even other people. I notice I'm like, he may not use those words. I think males do. They don't, some males don't like use those words of like, he would never call himself sensitive, you know?
Right.
Um,
Most guys are not like gonna announce, you
yeah.
know. I mean, I think the closest
Some
sometimes they
do,
come is
maybe.
divine masculine.
Ah, yes.
Yes, that's a little bit more acceptable, divine masculine.
Mm,
Yeah, I used to do that as well. Some of my fibromyalgia patients used to be able to shut
really?
lights on and off in the street and,
Okay.
get rid of the radio signal. I don't know if that's the same thing without testing
That's
your
a,
husband,
yeah, that's a lot
what
of
that
energy
is.
to, is that not a lot of energy though to deal with or no? What do you think?
Well, Well, I don't know about him, but
Yeah.
for me and the other people, when our energies were non-coherent,
Mm,
okay, we're not our nervous system, brain, heart, gut, we're not coherent.
hmm.
We would literally like break stuff left, right, and center, right?
Oh, interesting.
So the other
Okay.
possibility is that it is a symbol or sign of a message from the universe,
Mm,
right? Like for example, I came from a conference talking about like mold and like mercury toxicity, and it was like at that point very new to me, like some of this other stuff that I did not learn in medical school. So my brain was so full. When I came home, I kept saying, "Oh my gosh, my brain is so full. My brain is so full. Oh my gosh!" They're trying to integrate all this knowledge, right? Well, my car just died. Like it's just like
wow.
I don't know what's going on. So I took it to the mechanic, and he goes, "Oh, your computer got fried."
Oh,
My
interesting.
brain was too full, right? And I'm
Wow.
like,
Yeah.
okay, all
Yeah.
right. Thank you very much for the message, right? So sometimes it can be a reflection
Yeah.
of what else is going on energetically within us that is trying to get our attention, but is trying to get
Hmm.
our attention because we're not going to pay attention otherwise unless we get an outside signal. So it could
Right.
be that as well. And without, like I said, tuning in and testing him, we won't really know exactly what it is. But that's one of the reasons I have the healing method that I have,
Yeah.
so we can
I
know
love it.
definitively what the cause is.
Wow. That's, yeah, it's very fascinating. Because I do know there's different levels and different degrees of sensitivity, of course. And I've always called myself a physical empath. It's only because I could feel things very physically, like they literally physically feel like it's happening. And I'm like, when people will say, "How do you know the difference between you and other people?" I go, "Well, that's the life lesson." Because
Right. Yes.
sometimes I feel it feels so real. Like I literally, it's like you come and scratch my hand and I bleed. It feels that real to me. And so I
Mhm.
said, what I tell people, what I've done is either two things: is you just stop, pause, take a breath. Universe, this is my energy. No, take it away. God, if this is my energy, take it away. Angels, whatever it is, I tell people, and I go, you'll know right away. You'll feel a separation, and then you'll feel fine, or you'll just feel, oh, maybe it is me, you know? And I said, but I do feel like the self-care. How about even just sharing that as we're coming close to the end? What is good self-care for people that are sensitive and feelers, children and adults?
Well, number one, I definitely think that we do need to, first of all, honor that we have an energy field in the first place. There's many different measurements of that, but there is an energy field, and if we keep it clean, just like we brush our teeth, right, and we wash our bodies, to keep it clean on a regular basis is really important. The quickest, fastest way is through the Clearing Protection Spray formula. We can just spray ourselves. And in fact, I had a 14-year-old who was brought to me because mother was at wit's end. She was actually a massage therapist. And she said, "Look, we're ready to ship him off to his dad's because
Mm,
he's being violent with the 2-year-old. And we can't stand that." But I'm looking at this kid now. He's got his head down, right? He's had to see the doctor, the special doctor.
mm,
So his head's down. And I knew immediately, he was feeling other people's stuff. Like, so I
mhm.
said to him, I said, "There's nothing wrong with you." And he was like,
Wow.
"What?" I said, "There's nothing wrong with you." I said, "You just happen to have a lot of gifts, meaning that you sense a lot of things, a lot of energies, including all the stuff at school. So, in other words, you could sense
Mm,
what's going on like 100 miles away because you're that
wow.
gifted. But
Yeah.
the problem is that some of that energy doesn't, it just sticks. And unless you are taught how to clean it, then it's not going to feel very good." I said, "Do you ever feel like not good coming back from school?" He's like, "Oh yeah, sometimes I feel like I'm gonna explode," right? I said,
Wow.
"Okay, now, okay, so I said, well, I have something," and so we had made up a little bottle of Clear and Protection Spray formula. And of course, he's 14, so I had to like say it really. I said, well,
Make it cool. Make it
this is
cool.
one of the yes, this is one of the easy ways of clearing the energy field. And mom was into that because she's a massage therapist, right? So I said, okay, well, so would you mind spraying this on mom so mom could try it? And he goes, "Okay, what do I do?" And I said, "Well, just, spray her front, spray her back, and make her nice and wet, and she'll laugh." So we had a little joke over it. And so he did. And she's all like, right. And she's all smiling. He goes, can you spray it on me? Right. And I said, "Yeah, sure." So mom, you spray it on him. And so afterwards, I wasn't expecting much, but I said, "So how do you feel?" He goes, I feel calmer. And I was like, wow. I said, okay, well, good. I said, so I have a favor. So if mom comes home, she's maybe a little stressed, a lot of stuff going on, would you be willing to spray mom if she asked you to with the clearing and protection spray? Oh, yeah, sure, right? And I said, and the other way around too, if you come home from school, you feel like you're going to explode, whatever, totally, it's probably not your stuff. Maybe you can ask mom if you want her to spray you with, and goes, okay. And that's exactly what happened. So he came home from school one day, went straight for that bottle, handed it to his mom, going, Mom, spray me. I'm about to explode.
Oh.
And she did. And he was, so we just cleaned his energy field. Everything that was not his fell away. And he was sweet as pie. He never touched his 2-year-old sister violently ever again.
Wow.
Never got shipped off to dad. We teach kids, if I only worked with them once, but if we work with them a little longer, we teach them to use some of the other techniques. In my sensitivity and superpower book, we have like 6 clearing techniques in here, and they're fun. You can use your hands and, do it in the waterfall. The best thing you do sometimes is just plop the kid in the bath, with maybe some Epsom salts or Himalayan crystal salt, even better, or in a shower, and just imagine them washing all that stuff away. And then even see a picture of the energy field, see it, a bubble. One of my other kids, self-care, we talk about, she very, very A+ student, like she was 15, basically A+ in everything. She was just incredibly bright, but she had fibromyalgia. Well, of course she did, because she's an empath, right? None of the family knew what to do with her. And so she was one of the first disabled, fibromyalgia children that I ever had.
Yeah.
And so she goes into this exam. She blanks out. She fails it. Oh, an A+ student failing. I know that's not a pretty picture. She was so upset. But of course, she had a disability, right, that they had told the school about. So they were very, very empathetic about that. And I said to her privately, I said, did you remember to put your universal shield up? No. Did you remember your bubble? No. I said, well, here's the thing. You blanked out because it was a test situation and you're in a room with 30 other kids who don't know the material as well as you do. You were feeling their anxiety. No wonder you couldn't remember anything, right? Then she was like, oh, she kept thinking it was her fault. Like, what's wrong with me, right? And I'm like, you're just sensing everyone else's anxiety. You weren't nervous. You knew the material. So what they did was they had her sit alone in a room. Okay, I signed off on that, right? Sit alone in a room, redo it, aced it.
Wow.
So, but if we teach children day in and day out, just honor who they are, to manage their energy field, to know when it doesn't feel good, get in that bath, do that spray, do that meditation, whatever it is, then we manage it, then it doesn't have to go to drugs necessarily. It doesn't have to go to being disabled or an illness. So that is simple self-care that should be on the list of brushing your teeth and taking a bath.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for being here, but I want to hear final ways that people can connect with you in your book and anything else, and if you can share maybe later if you have links or something about protection energy, or maybe I send people your YouTube in the notes. I don't know. But yeah, ways that people can get in touch with you and all your contact info.
Sure. Yeah. So I actually have a community on this app called Circle. There's a lot of teachers on there now. It's sort of like Facebook, but without the prying or the censoring. So it's called the Light Medicine Community. I do a free monthly hour-long mini healing. It's a group and individualized healing, just to demonstrate the Toboccan healing method. There's different energies that come up each month, and so we address some of those things. Sometimes we talk about shoring up boundaries. Other times we talk about clearing negative energies. It just depends on what everybody needs. So we do that once a month. And that's, we can put the link, close to this video where people can just join for free. And then you get a wind of some of the other events that we have, whenever we have a new podcast guest, or whether we have a new a telesummit or interview coming up, different aspects of, sensitivity as your superpower. And then on my site, KarenCan.com, you can get a copy of the book. You can either get the ebook for $7.77, or you can get it at Amazon. And we have $1,000 worth of bonuses that come with any purchase of that book, because I wanted people to have some of these MP3s and have some of these resources that they can, learn a little bit more about themselves, do a little self-healing work. Some of these MP3s are energy infused, so as you listen to them, you're actually literally receiving a mini energy healing session. So that's really, really convenient. And then the Clearing and Protection Spray Formula, it's a great one. One of my most popular freebies of all time. I think we had it since 2016. That's gotten rid of, ghost portals, ghosts, negative energy on people. We've had people literally, like, if they have a really, really negative spouse, they'll actually spray the room thinking that they'll be nicer, and the spouse actually refuses to come into the room. It's hilarious. It's like, oops, sorry. And yeah, so we have lots and lots of resources for sensitive people. And would love for people to connect in the community. And we have lots of stuff, coming up as well, including my first documentary that I'm a cast member of, the Inside Effects movie at theinsideeffects.com, all about how the body heals itself. So we talk a little bit about, Western medicine, unconventional medicine, spiritual light medicine, how that all interplays together. So would love to connect with your audience in whatever way I can serve.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here and sharing all this. I feel like we could talk about this for hours and days. There's so many different healing spaces for children, for parents, for adults. Sounds like you kind of connect with all of it. And yes, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. And I love talking about sensitive children. And so this has been a great opportunity for me, because I often are talking mostly about adults, but love the opportunity to be able to talk about kids. So thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you all for joining episode 163, April 14th, 2023, supporting our heart-sensitive children and activating their gift towards positivity in today's world. Thank you for joining Spirit Baby Radio with your host, me, Kelly. And please join my newsletter for Spirit Baby 101 video on tips and practices. Order my book, It's a Journal, Sacred Communication, a Spirit Baby Journal, and Cards for Your Healing Journey, Spirit Baby Oracle Cards, Soul Answers from Spirit Baby. To learn more about my services and supporting people all around the world in private one-on-one sessions, online classes, programs, and private VIP retreats, you can reach me at kellyannmeehan.com or spiritbabymedium.com, as well as on Instagram at spiritbabymedium, and email is spiritbabymedium@gmail.com. Remember to always listen to your heart communication, and your spirit child says hello. Thank you for joining.